So now that we've looked at, how species go from one species to being multiple species, the next question is, how long does this take? How many mutations have to occur between species, between individuals to create different species? And it really depends. There's no one answer to those questions, and in fact, scientists are still asking that question. So there's a punctuated equilibrium theorem that describes periods of stasis, where things stay the same, followed by sudden change. So you've got kind of two theorems here illustrated for you. So here's the punctuated model, and then along this axis we have time. So this is as time continues. So this would be the common ancestor between these two butterfly species. And the punctuated equilibrium theorem means maybe something happened right here, where this body form and this body form all of a sudden had different fitnesses, where this was more fit than the original and this was more fit than the original. And all of a sudden we started selecting for both, and now those were the more fit, nothing changes, and we get the persistence of that individual to nowadays. So that's kind of the idea behind the punctuated equilibrium model, is that there are times of drastic or dramatic change, which results in different genotypes with different phenotypes, different looking individuals, different species, and then those species persist for long periods of time where there's no change in a stasis environment. There's another model called the gradual model, and you can see this with the same butterflies, what would have happened according to the gradual model. So the idea is that the gradual model is here, and there's different variations. And maybe in one environment we start to slowly select for the white, but it takes a long time. And then here we're seeing gradual changes more and more towards that orange butterfly. So rather than having a relatively short period of time where we saw rapid change, we're seeing very tiny changes in variation over long periods of time, eventually resulting in the white butterfly and the orange butterfly. And these are probably both right in certain contexts. There are definitely times where there have been rapid changes in evolution and speciation. So when the dinosaurs were extinct, because the dinosaurs filled an ecological niche, and all of a sudden they were gone. So we had a rapid evolution in mammals to make up for those niches. We didn't have large terrestrial mammals before then. All of a sudden they could take over that place. So that would be like a punctuated equilibrium. So speciation can be very fast. It can also be very slow, and sometimes it just depends. So beetles, we've seen we have a huge difference in species of beetles. There's a huge variety of species, ranging in huge difference of sizes and morphotypes and habitats, and we think that it's taken probably 40 million years, with an average of maybe 6.5 million years, for many of these species to evolve. Whereas in a punctuated pattern, we might see a single generation go by, which results in this wild sunflower, which is a result of allopolyploidy. And in one generation, we go from two separate species of parents to a brand new species in the next generation. So it can really be different depending on what type of organism we're looking at. The other kind of question is, well, how many mutations, right? How many genetic changes does it take between one species to the next? And again, it depends. Sometimes a single mutation, right, a single event of polyploidy, a doubling of chromosomes, is enough to create an entirely new species, especially in plants. Whereas in animals or other organisms, we might see tiny mutations changing that become more fit for a certain environment. And over a long period of time, selecting for that allele, we eventually end up with organisms that live in two different environments. And then they slowly develop these reproductive barriers and eventually become two different species. And maybe they have more in common genetically than the allopolyploids. Um, like humans and chimpanzees share something like 98% of their genome. That's a lot. That's very similar. But we're two separate species, right? We don't intermate with chimpanzees. And so the amount of time it takes and the amount of genetic difference between two species is really variable. And that's one of those things that makes it so hard to define species. If we could say, at 5% difference, you are a different species, speciation would be a lot easier to study, but it just doesn't work like that for all sorts of the diversity of life that we have on Earth.